would like to turn it over to Spencer Isom to walk us through the material.
All right, thank you, Board Chair Straka and members of the board. As the board is aware, the West Valley is experiencing unprecedented growth, which results in an increased demand for adult and student career and technical education opportunities. We are in the process of better understanding the dynamics for this growth and the accompanying need to meet increased demand for a qualified workforce, and looking at prospects for where to locate new campuses. It would be fiscally prudent to look at opportunities to expand our existing facilities, namely our central campus, which is currently at capacity. To this end, it is my pleasure to reintroduce to the board and the members of the public Mr. Jim Miller. Jim is a Senior Director of Real Estate and a 35-year employee of John F. Long Properties, LLP, and representative of the John F. Long Family Trust. And as a side note, he's your general man about town. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Miller. I know he brought a associate with him, Mr. Tim Wright, and I'll let him introduce Tim. So.
Good afternoon. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's good to see you all again. I haven't been out for 14 months. This is the first time I have big boy pants on and a shirt with a collar and buttons. It's usually been shorts and t-shirts for the last 14 months. But we're all here. As most of you know, John F. Long was one of the founders of West-MEC way back in the day. Some people have heard this story from me before, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest version tonight. After doing a whole bunch of studies and finding out the law has to be changed to have schools in a district to form it, we hired Greg Donovan from NAU to help us go out to schools and basically say, what is a joint technical education district? He was on the ground floor way back when, but we got 77% of the votes to join districts of the 7 school districts that were coming in our schools. You never get that in a vote. So people in the West Valley really wanted career technical education. As some of you know, Mr. Long passed away 10 years ago. Jacob Long was brought in probably 30-some years ago to learn the business side of the business. Has taken over. Things have been running smoothly. There's been no hitches even in the COVID. We all work from home, but that was not a big inconvenience. So West-MEC is near and dear to the John F. Long roots and near and dear to an employee of John F. Long. And we've tried to work as hard as we can to make things happen faster than anybody ever realized. If Mr. Long was here today, and I've said this before, he would say one of my greatest accomplishments was the formation of West-MEC. And he built 35,000 homes. He gave away millions and millions of dollars to charity. Served on the city council, and this is one of his top memories of success. That success to him was all the money. So we have a piece of property. We have sold in the general area of 91st to 99th, and then out in El Mirage, about 1,500 acres in the last year and a half. You had a presentation the last board meeting that I couldn't come to, and I just saw what they were going to talk about. And if those were glowing reports that you paid money for, it was worth it to know what's going on in the West Valley. We're a land developer out here right now, and so we know how fast things are moving and how the competition for residential and for employment is heating up here in our general area. property, if you look at, okay, let's see which one you're looking at. So the big blue that you see down here is our Algodon Center, and it's our residential portion of the Algodon Center. It's going to go away next year with 2 different buyers for residential. And there's some employment going on the east side of that freeway. And then on the north side, as you go up, you see that little blue area. That's, and the other area there too is a little piece that we have that will probably go either residential or multifamily. Then you go up to the next blue, and oh, we sold that a year and a half ago, that blue to Lennar Homes. Now if you go up to the next blue one on the top right, and I think it's on the next slide, a little bit bigger now. This is 91st and yeah, so it's not blue anymore, it's brown. So you can see they're building the first half, and we've already sold them the second half to build homes there at 91st and Camelback. The next slide, please. And this is the last one. This is us. And I think most of you get your bearings on the Glendale Airport. Boy, did we get an old picture. That picture's got to be 75 years old when I was born. You know where you're at up here with the aviation campus. I'm sorry, I apologize. But I'm sorry, that is West-MEC campus. So you can see what you've done in 6 acres. That was, what, how many years ago, Greg? 10? Maybe a little bit more?
About 12 almost now.
Wow. So we have this dirt right right to the left of the A. There's about 30 acres of 300 acres that we sold the other 200 some acres recently. But it sits up above and it's on grade, where you know where the sand and gravel operation is all way below grade. So this is, this is built already. So it's available to West-MEC. It's if we don't sell it here soon, because it is in a trust, and if any of you are familiar with trust and being a trustee, they have a life. The beneficiaries want their money in under the statutes. You have to disperse a trust in the most efficient way, and especially if any beneficiary says that they want to be bought out. So we've been at it for 10 years. It's been 10 long years. The IRS is very happy with us. But we now need the family's all in their 60s. And it's nice to have a lot of dirt, but you can't divide dirt up economically. So there'll never be a disagreement. On George Washington's, there's never a disagreement. They'll take all of those. But my point being is, I as an employee here, and it's Tim Wright, who really is our director of real estate, is with me. I'm the senior one because of the gray hair. It's a site that I've talked to, and Greg has talked to me about it. It's in Glendale. You build a campus there, so you know what you're going to be getting if you buy a site in Glendale. And if that particular site is geographically where you think your future expansion is, we'll keep it open probably, well, I shouldn't say probably, we will keep it open till the end of the year. And we'd like to, then we'll start marketing heavily. So we've got now until, I'd prefer like November, but we can go to the end of the year if there's some real interest in it. As you know, and I'm not bragging or looking for cookies on it, but we will honor our tradition of working with you at below market value. And I think that's probably the only thing I can say in an open meeting. So my wife just had right hip surgery. She's in a walker at home alone. So I was hoping to stay for the whole hour. But as I see my duties at home, I'm going to have to leave here right after, unless there's some questions from the board, if that's appropriate, Mr. Chair. The other thing that, if this is the right site, I would appreciate an answer to be able to work with staff and move forward with negotiations once you've made a decision on maybe a particular site. So is there any questions you have of me? I apologize for having to leave.
I don't think it's more for you. Mr. Donovan, I think, would we just want either a thumbs up or thumbs down for staff to work with Mr. With the Long Trust, or?
Mr. Chairman, if the board's ready at this time, or if they'd like to wait to the end of the study session as we again continue to contemplate the overall growth and those things, either way. I think it's important to know for everybody in our community, again, that they would never sit here and brag about it, but our central campus was given to us by the Long family. They helped us acquire our northeast campus. They gave us a very good deal on what will become our southeast campus. So Mr. Miller is being very, very conservative about being a supporter and bought in. They are truly, as a family and a legacy, bought in to making sure we have a ready workforce under Mr. Long's original dream of developing the West Valley, that it would never develop without a ready and able workforce. So they've treated us well before, I'm sure they will again, and I believe it is an excellent parcel for future opportunity for numerous reasons, if we'd like to go into it at this time, but it's an excellent parcel. We appreciate their willingness to have this conversation.
I missed how many acres we're talking?
It's a little over 30 acres. Yep, just a tad over 30 acres. So it's 132 million square feet, something like that.
It is currently marked. If the board would like to go see it at some point, it is staked, and I could specifically show you the exact boundaries if you'd like.
And would you envision some kind of underpass under that road so students could cross between the two without?
I think those are all things to discuss. I wouldn't, Glen Harbor is a very quiet road.
Today.
But essentially, Mr. Chairman, I think the discussion would be, unlike a traditional high school, our students would not necessarily be transversing back and forth between campuses, because there would be programs on this side of the street and programs on this side of the street. So there really isn't like a traditional high school where you're going from the math department over to the PE department, so you're transversing the campus. We won't have these mass migrations of students back and forth. But, you know, those are all things to consider, whether it's over or under or across the crosswalk or how that would get laid out. I think one of the primary excellent opportunities is to move our district warehouse, which currently occupies one of the buildings on Central Campus, turn that into an instructional facility. Certainly we don't need 30 acres for a warehouse, but I mean, that's just one example of moving that warehouse. And as we continue to grow and acquire stuff that has to be warehoused and those kinds of things. So excellent, excellent opportunities for the future.
Charlie, any questions? Mr. Hutchinson?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to really thank you for coming down today. I grew up in John F. Long neighborhood.
Right.
My family was close with the Toma Choffs. I've seen the good that the Longs have done in the West Valley. In El Mirage, the city that I live in, our city hall where my office is, sits on donated land from the Longs. So I just wanted to thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And the Babcocks grew up in Maryvale. Did you see that article?
I did not.
6401 West Sells, and they're all, they were basketball players and coaches, and then they went and worked for teams in the front office. And it was the third one down, Dave Babcock, that discovered the Greek Freak. And that's in loving term, please. I think we all know who the basketball player, Giannis. Well, anyway, thank you for saying that very nicely. Yeah.
Thank you so
And I lived a lot of years in Maryvale.
My family lived there up until I was, I think, 6 years old, at 75th and Indian School, and then we moved up to 43rd and Northern, and
Oh,
West
okay.
Valley my entire life, so
Yeah.
I really appreciate the whole corporation.
I still live in the West Valley.
Me too.
Sorry, I digress. As usual.
Mr. Miglerino, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First of all, Mr. Miller, thanks for being here tonight. And another big thanks, I know you've had many, for all the years you supported West-MEC and all those long families done for education. It's much appreciated. I've looked over that parcel. I've been out there several times. I wanted to be sure I called it this morning, thought so I knew where it was. And I understand we can have programs on one side of one harbor and programs on another. But boy, it sure be nice to have them connected. And I just, as we work through this, I'm not behind this 100%, but I just wondered if there's a way the Long family would have some means to put either an overpass or an underpass over Glen Harbor before they sold it to us. I'm just trying to look at economic advantages to that. But I just bringing that up as a thought, nothing more. And again, a big thanks to the Long family for all they've done with West-MEC.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like me to address that?
If you'd like.
Sure, sure. Those are some questions that are usually answered in the due diligence phase, because all future buyers, if you're just going to do an industrial building, not a West-MEC building, they don't care about the ingress and egress. So sometimes you have to talk to traffic engineers, sometimes you have to go down and talk to the city. It's all done during, it's a prime example of why you do due diligence. And so, you know, by the time you come up to the closing date, if you're not still satisfied that you get the kids across, and adults, I'm sorry, then you shouldn't do the deal if that's the biggest issue. So those kind of things, questions, there might be 10 of those types of questions that come up when you get the title report, you get to engineering's final staking and so forth. We give you a fairly long period of time. So, you know, if we, if you go in escrow, let's say somewhere down, it usually takes another month or two to get into escrow. But so now you've got two months. But if that's when the buyer normally typically starts spending money on other engineers and so forth, and doing layouts and configurations of buildings and so forth. So, West-MEC would have 90, 120 days after they get the title report and every piece of engineering that we have on the property in our history files. So we'll give them a package of due diligence, and then they'll hire, consultants if they want to, or whatever. Closing takes a while. So when you were talking, somebody was talking sooner than later. My opinion is now's the time to start moving towards negotiations.
Anything else from the board, Ms. Wiley? Thank you for coming, sir.
You bet.
And please pass our thanks. I mean, really for all the support over the years.
Yeah. Well, Jake's like his dad. He's humble. You never see this kind of thing in the paper, do you? Yeah.
No, you don't?
But if a football player, if a good football player gets $5,000 to, feed the homeless, you hear big headlines. So that's one of the nice things about working for the Longs. What it has been the fact that they don't do this because they want recognition. In fact, they prefer not to. You never see a building with John F. Long's name on it, except one at 51st that the city of Phoenix put up without our permission. Put the sign up and wouldn't take it down. But other than that, he doesn't have his name on a single building or a single playground. Or, I can go on. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, board members. Before we go to the next item, I just wanted to make a comment. When Mr. Miller and the Long family had mentioned this property, we we took an assessment and realized that this may be the only opportunity if we decide to expand at that location. This land is pretty much the only opportunity to do so. In transitioning to the next item, if the board wishes, then it too is about mid and long range planning for the district. I've been able to attend several meetings in the region, whether through West-MEC or through one of the chambers, where our major cities talk about the growth and development that they're experiencing. During last board meeting, we brought the city of Peoria in. This board meeting, Superintendent Donovan invited the City of Surprise representative to attend and talk a little bit about the unprecedented growth that they're experiencing. Just as a side note, I did attend the Surprise Chamber breakfast, of which a Surprise representative was talking about their downtown development and some of the larger developments that they have available. So in an effort to keep the board informed, we've invited Mr. Michael Hoover to present today, and I understand Mr. Hoover brought Lloyd Abrams. From what I know of Michael, he's a longtime economic development manager for the City of Surprise and serves as chair of West-MEC's Economic Development Committee. He has proven to me to be a great supporter of West-MEC, as well as career and technical education and workforce development in the West Valley. And I'm pleased to introduce him today to the board. So with that, I ask Mike Hoover to come up and present.
Governing Board Chair, members of the Governing Board, I'm Mike Hoover. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be here today. And before the presentation, I want to start with two thank yous. First, thank you for building this beautiful campus, the Northwest campus in the City of Surprise. And the icing on the cake was the light box. Greg didn't talk about that when talking about the campus. He was talking about the education center. And then when the light box came on as a potential community amenity, I realized not only that we were aligned in technical education for our residents, but we were aligned in community sharing. And that is a value I think we have in the West Valley, and when major investments are made that exhibit that value, it's with great appreciation, so thank you. The second one is the Long family is dedicated to education, and I want to thank them. They actually made a critical investment in Ottawa University's residential component, which really was kind of the key for that residential campus. And so in my 13 years with the City of Surprise, our job is jobs, and the two most fun projects I ever worked on were Ottawa and West-MEC, and I'd like to think that really it's because they're related to the future of Surprise, why I'm so excited. But thank you again for that beautiful campus. We love showing it off, we love going on tours, and we're really looking forward to aligning it with the future growth of the City of Surprise, which is exciting. And I used the word yesterday, a little terrifying at the same time, and you'll see some of the numbers and why. But I think with good planning and coordination between all these wonderful agencies in the West Valley, we can be successful. So if it's okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, a lot of people know that the history of the City of Surprise. It really was a kind of a rural community in the 80s, turned into a wonderful, beautiful retirement community in the 90s. Then the boom happened in the 2000s. And then we had a slow decade and went from 110,000 people in 2010 to what we think is going to be right around 150,000 people when this census comes in September. And that's a slow decade. So really what we've done over the last several years through West-MEC is really try to realign that perception from being a retirement community, which sometimes is aligned with a lot of the West Valley, to what's really happening, which is a significant portion of our community members are under the age of 18. So what are we seeing in 2021? A lot of home growth, a lot of retail. I really think what we're seeing on the commercial development side is a snapback from 2008 to 2014, where really the region took a break, Surprise more than any of them, and we're catching up with a lot of the growth that should have been happening in that period. But what's really exciting for us is what we're seeing is a lot of industry coming into the West Valley. I'm very proud to work with West-MEC because I believe all of the industry that's coming into the West Valley, whether it's in Surprise, whether it's in Goodyear, whether it's in El Mirage. These are for all of our residents. So we cheer Glendale's success just south of us, south of Peoria. We cheer El Mirage's success. And when we get a little bit too competitive, I remind my colleagues that we're all on the same team, and that's the West Valley. So we are 100 square miles incorporated. We have an additional 200 square miles in our planning area. And what you see here is just a small part of the incorporated area. And so from an economic development perspective, what we do is we promote what's really prepared near term. My colleague Lloyd Abrams, who will assist me in some of the future planning part of this conversation, he has an unenviable task of really managing all 300 acres. So the economic development guys really get to work with the easy stuff. He has to worry about what's happening in 20 years. But what we've done is we've really aligned a lot of that off of Bell Road, with our former city hall being turned into a business incubator, city center, which is the downtown development that we're really working on. But really what's been kind of, I think, the thing that's been most enjoyable for us is working on the 2 square mile railplex that's only about 1.5 miles south of our city center. But our residents would say it's all the retail that's coming out to the 303. So there's just so much variety of developments coming in. But just to give you a sense, right now there's 5 major multifamily projects coming to the city center. We have 300 acres in our railplex that 6 months ago 300 acres was available, and that 300 acres is now down to 25. All of it's under some level of land contract, which is a lot of industry. And then on the 303, we're seeing industry there, but we have over 400,000 square foot of retail that's going through development right now. So we're seeing that elevation of the whole community, the whole region that's occurring right before our eyes. And because of where the growth is occurring, for the first time in our map, we're actually promoting North Surprise as a near-term retail opportunity with Spectrum, which is 90 acres, just a little bit north of the 303, which I think is going to dovetail into the latter part of this conversation, where we see a lot of the growth going and how we need to prepare. So again, the opportunities of future downtown, Loop 303, North Surprise. This, if I had one slide to show, this would probably be it. When we look at the population, I think we're numb in Metro Phoenix about population growth. Not every part of the United States is growing like us. But the piece that's so interesting about this is a year ago, I would not have believed that this was possible, that we are around 36,000 total jobs inside of the city of Surprise right now. But we're going to jump to 60,000 in the next 10 years. That kind of jump is going to be a sea change in the focus that our department in economic development has, which is really going to be aligning more with our workforce programming. The City of Surprise invested in a workforce program position with Maricopa County at Work, Arizona at Work, 2 years ago to start to prepare for what we believe is the decade of job growth that we're going to see over the next several years. So really, what's driving this? Well, it's really about land use, entitlement, and how fast development can come in. We believe in sustainable development, we believe in smart development, but development is happening and we're having to prepare for it. And Lloyd is going to kind of transition this conversation. Lloyd is the Assistant Director for Community Development. Again, he manages not only the long-term growth, but all of the development that's coming through the queue right now. And it's the land use and the entitlement that we're going to show you that really starts to paint that picture of why we're going to see the jump in population and why we're going to see that jump in jobs and why closer alignment with West-MEC's growth is so important for our community. Lloyd?
Chair, board members. So the depiction on the screen is our general plan land use map. Back in 2015, we took a parcel-based map and generalized the land use to allow the city to react to the market conditions. So we basically normalized some of the land uses into these 4 categories, primarily neighborhood, commercial and office, or commerce and office and employment. And as Mike stated, that was to posture ourselves for the future for growth and to where we could streamline some of our development processes so we don't have to wait a year's time to get the right land use in place. Can I have the next slide? This one? So this is a snapshot of our land development map, and within that, the primary yellow and is what is in the main south of the McMicken Dam, that white open space there. That's pretty much built out for the most part with entitlements. And then what we're seeing the growth go is to the west there on that map. That area there right now has about 80,000 dwelling units. The projection to what you see on here is another 30,000 estimated dwelling units that have entitlement today. Going north of Grand and north of the 303 there, we have about 8,000 dwelling units, lots platted today. There is approximately 77,000 dwelling units entitled for that area. And this past fiscal year, we did over 2,800 single-family permits alone. As Mike pointed out, the 5 major multifamily complexes have applied. We've got a number of more of those in the pipeline that is coming in and waiting for concept meetings to present their projects as well.
So we want to first thank you again for the investment in the City of Surprise, the collegial alignment with a lot of the programming that we're trying to really bring online for our community members. And we do love West-MEC. We love saying this, the facilities you build. We brought the Ottawa University president in. He's an electrical engineer from the East Coast. And he said it was better than any facility he's ever seen at any collegiate level. He was stunned. And that's a testament to not only the investment that the West Valley makes, but also how you steward those investments. And so we appreciate that, and I'm glad to answer any questions with Boyd.
Questions from the board?
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So by 2030, what do you project the population to be?
So 2030, we'll have eclipsed 200,000. So we'll be close to 220,000 in population by the end of the decade.
Okay. And then by, you said you're right around 110, 130 right now?
So we'll be at 150. I'm optimistic. Lloyd's always a little more conservative, but we'll be right around 150 with the census this year.
Okay, 150.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the past 10 years, so you grew quite a bit. I mean, it was in the 20% range.
Right.
And it was kind of consistent with Peoria, which grew a little bit under you. But so do you think that that's going to be comparable? Maybe this is a tough question. Predictions are unpredictable. But do you think you'll grow similarly to Peoria with the chip factory, or do you believe, I hear rumors of Wayfair coming your way? What do you think?
So the population growth, we actually were hamstrung in the last decade for population growth and still grew at that rate that you talked about. Population growth, the only limiting factor is really kind of the sustainability components that we are stewards of. But we believe we're going to be over 200,000. As far as the job growth, some of the things that we're seeing in the paper with TSMC, the kind of the state policies of activating state trust land into job producing components. If you look at the state trust land in Peoria, look at the state trust land in the City of Surprise, a lot of that will probably turn into some level of residential, but it is positioned for major employment. If you start to look at US 60, the BNSF Railway, some of those other major infrastructure investments, those are very attractive for TSMC-like projects. And so we anticipate more of that occurring down the 303 and up the US 60. And that's really where the long-term planning, but also the alignment is so important to us.
Okay. And one final question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Let me put you on the spot. You heard about the proposed location land. Do you believe that's a good, well-positioned for Surprise?
As far as, you're talking about the Glendale piece here?
I'm talking about the 91st and Camelback piece.
Yes, in this area. So it's interesting, as a Surprise person, but also a West-MEC person, what we love about this area is it's where north meets south. And it is, from my perspective, one of the best areas for major administrative governance, whether it be a West-MEC, a Great America Foreign Trade Zone, or West-MEC. And this is where both the growth in the south and the north meet. So you put me on the spot. That sounds like maybe a polite answer, but really my conversations with West-MEC, I believe where they are, where the Foreign Trade Zone office is, and where you are, is a perfect location for the West Valley.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious, on your jobs, is that just physical jobs in Surprise?
Correct.
So what about, with COVID, there's been a big push for work at home. As a result, people have wanted bigger houses. And Surprise has bigger houses and they're more affordable. So do you see yourself as a destination in the valley for work at home families that don't have to commute? And what does that do to growth? And what does that do to your plan? And how do you count those jobs of work at home where they really don't have an office?
You have absolutely hit on one of the biggest challenges, because that's such a shift in how jobs are tracked, both at the federal and state level. And I know our agencies are trying to catch up with that. They're using a lot of external data to track that. The short answer is that I think you're going to see a lot of call centers turn into that environment. It's a quality of life. It's a way to access a job and not have to drive out of town. But physical plants are still going to be growing in the West Valley. We're seeing in the conversations with the state is that we're going to have mega site developments. From our perspective, what we really care about is our community members to be able to do something that provides for their family, whether it be working at home or whether it be commuting inside of the region for meaningful work. And that's really what I think our role is.
I just think you're missing an opportunity because you have a lot of green belts and it's very attractive. And if I was stay at home, it's affordability, and I can buy a bigger house to have my home office. So I just think that you may be underestimating your growth.
Underestimating the growth because of the attractiveness of that type of
Right.
product.
If I'm going to work at home, I can buy a bigger house in Surprise than I can have in Central Phoenix, and therefore, why wouldn't I move? It's a better quality of life.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's something that we're trying to get our arms around. There is a housing crisis going on in the West Valley, and part of it is really due to the process that it takes to get infrastructure into these growing areas. If we're going to remain affordable and have quality, and Lloyd knows this, the planning groups across the West Valley are going to have to recognize that, because to your point, with people moving from California coming into our market, they want to be able to have that quality of life at an affordability as well. So, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just dovetail on Chairman Straka's question. So if you look at Surprise versus Goodyear, the growth is 20% to 42% respectively for those two cities. Can you maybe talk about why? Is it just there was a lot more land to develop in Goodyear, or how does that maybe, we're trying to understand what to do based on growth of different areas, all that we encompass. So I don't know if you would comment on that.
I think it comes down to fundamentals, and the fundamentals are the availability of entitled property and the ability to bring infrastructure. I think what you're describing is really what MAG is having to try to wrestle with when they do these projections. And I'm very glad to work with you and MAG to try to get a sense of why there's maybe more growth in one area or the other. But we know the reason it's in the West Valley is because we're in one of the best areas in the United States to develop, and the East Valley is nearing build out. And so that's an exciting time, but also, again, a terrifying time that we have to make good investments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions over here?
What, yeah, you keep using a term that I thought I understood and then you used it again and I think I got lost. What is entitled property?
Oh, I'll let Lloyd do this, because economic development people will just answer questions that may not always be right. So.
Entitled property means they've gone through the zoning process and they have their zoning entitlements. In other words, the land use, the number of dwelling units, they do design standards. So that's what entitlement means. They've gone through that process, got in most cases, a master plan approved by city council.
Okay, so that would be the difference between that and wild land or some giant farmland that hasn't gotten, no architect or engineer has played with it yet.
Correct, as well as the difference between that and actually being platted.
Right, was zoned and all that, gone through the city and that, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, you can't put 100 houses then in if there's no sewer line hookup or no water.
We used to do it.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Donovan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover.
I
Thanks
think
again
it's
for the light
an
box.
exciting time, and I mean, it's going to be exciting to see what happens the next 10, 20 years.
Thanks again.
Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Pingarelli, you said something about 91st Avenue and Camelback, and you kind of lost me there. Could you clarify that? What you said?
Just the property location. Maybe I misspoke on the coordinates, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay,
at the
you said
Albion
the-
Center.
Yeah, the 91st and Camelback is a housing development of land previously owned by the Longs.
Okay,
We're-
okay.
We've purchased land down at Thomas in the 101 for a future
Okay.
campus, but the land that Mr. Miller was specifically talking about is located right to the west of
Right.
Central Campus, which is Glen Harbor, and nobody knows what approximately 104th, 105th Avenue in Glendale.
Okay.
So this direction, right across from our
Thank you for
Central
that
Campus.
clarification.
Am I
And then-
right? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Am I right in thinking that Glen Harbor's pretty much dead-ended at the airport? Because the Agua Fria River and the New River, they merge right underneath that. And so like it's not like Glen Harbor south of Glendale is gonna get a bunch of traffic, because that's kind of like.
It is, Mr. Kaltenbach, Mr. Chairman, exactly correct. It dead ends at the airport and has nowhere to go because of the river. Northbound, it goes up through the Glen Harbor Industrial Park.
Right.
And essentially, you can take it up to Olive and then it ends. So Glen Harbor Boulevard runs from Olive, northern Glendale, and goes about another almost half mile down to the dead end at the bottom of the airport. And it will be there forever. And northbound is the same because it runs into houses up at Olive.
Okay.
So I think for some conversation and thought processes for the future of the board. Mr. Kaltenbach, you've been here. Mr. Straka, you've been here. Years ago, and with Mr. Miller and Mr. Long and those things, when you talk to a community and you talk to parents about their comfort zone of students traveling, high school students traveling to a technical center, we discovered there is always some concern about long distance travel, putting their 16-year-old on a freeway and those kinds of things. And so the historical background of West-MEC is to put campuses within 20 to 25 minute commute sheds of a number of comprehensive high schools or communities that would feed that campus. Essentially today, our 4 campuses serve all 48 comprehensive high schools within a 25-minute drive, except Wickenburg and Tonopah Valley. And both of those are within a 30 to 35-minute drive of either the Northwest campus or the Southwest campus. We don't have to keep that. I just share that with you, that there's a certain amount of distance that high school parents of high school kids are comfortable with putting their kids to attend a program of some type. Adults will travel farther, but essentially adults who are typically working, most adults that would be attracted to our programs, are going to come to us after they've put in a full day's work. And so how far are they willing to travel, either once they go home or headed towards home stopping in between to take some type of a program. So with that in mind, I think the bigger conversation, or not the bigger conversation, but part of this conversation is about this growth, which we've had discussion this evening about Surprise, last month with Peoria, and I hope at some point relatively soon we could also have Buckeye come in here. We know we have purchased the land and we're ready to build here at the 101 in Thomas, which will serve the Tolleson, Levine, and sort of the east end of the Agua Fria school district here. Our Southwest campus is going to continue to be filled with students with that growth of Buckeye. At some point, my rationale for having discussion of Buckeye is to look at their projected growths, and possibly is there a future need for land as far out as the 85 highway because of the growth that's coming there. Today, we essentially sit here in our Surprise campus, our Northwest campus, is essentially full. That is a landlocked campus. There is no room for additional buildings. We can always examine what programs we have there and whether or not we have the right programs and those kinds of things. But as we've talked about today, the demand for employment and also the future of housing more or less necessitates some conversation of how do we accommodate the potential for the ongoing growth. And I know Mr. Strack and I have had some conversation that people stay in their homes longer. So will Northwest continue to stay full for the next 30 years as people stay in their homes, but the people with children live farther out? Do we commute them in and those kinds of things? All good conversations to have. But I think we need to seriously look at these growth projections and talk about some possible land purchase in North Peoria, farther west in Surprise, like 7, 8 miles, 9, 10 miles west of where we're currently located, and perhaps as clear out as Highway 85 between I-10 and somewhere south of there a few miles. I say this to the board not that we can project completely that on this date and this year we're going to start building, but land, as we heard tonight about entitlements and development, we see on their maps, becomes harder and harder to get and seldom gets cheaper and cheaper. I remind us all that when we own land, it doesn't really cost us much once we purchase it because we don't pay property taxes. We just have to maintain the weeds and make sure other things don't happen that shouldn't happen. Relatively low cost. We can always disperse that land. I also remind the board that there was a time, I think I've told the story more than once, we purchased the land in Buckeye in 2009 with some nervousness that I promised them we would start building something in 2019, and we were essentially done by 2019. So things have a tendency to grow and expand, sometimes faster than anticipated, but just because we buy a parcel of land doesn't mean we have to develop it very quickly, nor does it mean we have to develop all of it immediately. We never guessed. When we were offered the 6 acres at Central Campus, it seemed very sufficient. At the time, that's where West-MEC was. We were excited, we were happy. We knew we could get 2 buildings on there, have 4 or 5 programs. There was a time when we discussed, Mr. Straka and Mr. Kaltbach might remember some of this, we thought our campuses would have about 5 programs apiece. And we have one with 17, and we'll have one with 19, and we're going to grow beyond that. So looking at the future is important. I think getting some land in our back pocket, as the saying goes, they're not making any more dirt, is something for us to really consider. The least amount of housing necessarily being built right around the Central Campus, but there is housing going around as you go up and down Glendale and Northern, you see that. But it's a prime location for us, again, to look at some very heavy or large use type programs. I talked a little bit ago about engrossing the current warehouse into a program and moving the warehouse across the street, probably down to the south end. But I will tell you right now, if that campus was represented in this conversation, it would be about expanding aviation. We're turning people away. The aviation industry doesn't appear to have any slowdown over the next 20 to 30 years projected. So it's really not even a possibility today when we have that serious conversation about Central Campus of, is there another program or 2 we could squeeze into Building B? It's about how fast can aviation get their hands on that additional space to open more sections of adult aviation opportunities during the day, which we are constantly being lobbied for by some of the adult population. So, yes, you heard Mr. Miller. The Long family is anxious to dispose of this piece of land by the end of the year because of the trust. The others may not be quite the rush, but things are growing again. And I think it's worth some future discussion. And tonight was just, again, continue to let the board consider this and ponder this about some other purchases of land to be prepared for the future. I could not sit here tonight and tell you I think in 2026 or 2023 or 2025 we need to be building more here or there. But I do believe with these projections, as Mr. Hoover's here tonight, Peoria here last time, Buckeye, there is no doubt we're going to need some additional campuses at some point in the future. And acquiring that land will become more and more difficult. So that's my piece, Mr. Chairman, of just the overall picture as we continue to and if we could give some direction this evening, it would be appreciated to either let's get into more serious conversation or no, we just don't think we're interested in that land or whatever.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Remind me how much unspent bond money we have at the moment?
$100 million.
100 million, no.
That's what's on the budget report.
Well, that's not unspent bond money. Ms. Thompson?
How much bond, like, if we're gonna buy property, how much bond money do we have left to spend?
There's currently $60 million.
Okay.
About 57.
And how much of that is for property?
About 20%.
12 million.
We have allocated about $46 million to a phase one of the southeast, the new property at 101 in Thomas, in that thought process. That could go up or down a little bit. I think the board is aware with this week, you'll hear a little bit, we have finally, after 5 years, gotten a signed agreement for the parking lot at Northeast Campus. We want to do some improvements of the Northeast Campus, and that's probably, some significant improvements and opportunities, and there's probably a few $1 million in that one. So, there's always some conversation to be had. So again, some of that, you're exactly right, Mr. Kaltenbach. How much do we want to allocate to land and all those kinds of things is certainly some consideration. And the allocation of the remaining 2016 bond campaign.
When I learned to speak, I didn't hear you mention much. Last week we talked about, and we have 5 minutes, TWSC. And Peoria and everybody said they expect growth to go north of there. And I think Anthem is very much like a community like Surprise, has a lot of green belts, and it would drop right down to that TWSC campus. So if there's a lot of growth there and a lot of open land to build homes, what is our opportunity there to build another campus?
I think those are all things that I need some of this to get out there and get serious, because there's always things out there. But as any of you who've done any of this, I can talk and have iced tea with lots of people, but they want to know how serious you really are before they'll ever start really telling you what their thought process for cost or how soon they want to divest or those kinds of things. Dr. Isom has been working diligently to get us some meetings with some of those folks to talk about development, employment needs, and some of those things. So, when I say North Peoria, that's a very broad statement.
Yeah, so, I think there are two components. One is the population growth, and as we learned last month, what are the demographics going to look like, right? So with Peoria, for example, we project some population growth, but in terms of schools, it was going to be kind of flat overall, right? From 2020 to 2030. Where I look at projected population changes, and I'm looking at a table right now from the demographer's office in Arizona, Buckeye is projected to grow 82%. That's 70,000 new residents. Surprise, 50,000. So that's pretty good. Mesa we're not in, so we don't worry about that. Goodyear, 44,000. And Peoria, about 16.9%, or 31,000. So sorry to throw out all those numbers, but what I heard last time is that when you looked at the areas of Peoria, maybe that didn't include all north, is that there weren't going to be a lot of new kids, people coming into those schools in Peoria.
I wouldn't argue that part of the presentation about
So
his
I
number
think,
projection.
I guess all I'm
So
saying
we-
is all I'm saying, thank you, Mr. Chairman, all I'm just saying is that in a analysis, those two components would be important, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I think we have about 3 minutes left. So this isn't a voting item, but I guess by a show of thumbs, should we give Mr. Donovan and staff the direction to pursue the 30 acres at Glen Harbor and Glendale?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I just have two quick questions.
sure.
Greg, what was the build year on the Northwest campus? Exactly, what year did we launch that?
Sixteen,
17.
And what about Central?
10, 9, 10.
So, I mean, it's concerning to me that a facility that's 4 years old is already at or near capacity in Northwest. I remember, you did say that, right? Northwest campus is getting full. I would say that whatever future project or land purchase we consider, we should make sure that it doesn't fill up in 48 months. And then force us to have to rebuild an entire new facility in addition to it. That's all.
6 acres, 10 acres, 17 acres, 19 acres, now 30 acres, and then whatever we do from here, Mr. Hutchinson, we wouldn't disagree with you. It has been more
I know on the
successful.
city side, whenever we plan anything, a new building, a new courthouse, city hall, we're planning for 20 to 30 years out rather than 48 months out to be at capacity.
All right, so show of hands, I guess you're looking for direction on the Glen Harbor first. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Mr. Miglarino, can you just give us a thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, you look like thumbs up.
And this isn't permission to purchase,
This is
this is
just to
permission to get
pursue-
into serious conversation, bring back you specific information.
Negotiate and bring back offers.
Thank you, Mr. Strick. I needed to unmute my mic. It's always cheaper to buy if you're building. That's why prudent planning is a very important part of what the board and the administration does. And I don't think we should be looking at things for the future, because with the information we've had in the last recent board meetings, with the information to the public, with the growth of the need for CTE and companies like whatever it is, we need to be forward thinking and not stuck in the mud. So I'd like to see us and see what we can do.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Miglarino. And if you could talk more towards the middle of your laptop, some of that faded away. There you go.
I turn the screen from now and then because I'm sitting in a hard chair. And I only go so far.
Okay, you sound really good now, so stay there.
Good luck.
All right. Just, I guess, did everyone, Ms. Wiley, Mr. Donovan, you have your to pursue? Was there any other discussion we needed out of that?
No, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for bringing that. Thank you to the City of Surprise. It's exciting to see what's next. All right, it is 5:01. So I'm going to call the regular session to order. The first item is adoption of the meeting agenda. Is there any request to change or modify the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Ellis.
Second.
Second by Dr. Pingarelli. All in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, it passes. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to introduce Ms. Diane Parsons, our Research and Evaluation Analyst, to lead us in the pledge.
Chairman Straka, Governing Board members, Superintendent Donovan, and guests, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'd ask everyone to take a moment of silence. All right, moving on to item number 6, approval of the minutes. Were there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing no corrections to the minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Hutchinson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to current events. Mr. Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to steal a little thunder from one of our later presentations as well. But yesterday, we were informed by the United States Department of Education that at long last, in some ways, our IT security program, this is all adult, IT security, HVAC, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, pharmacy technician, and avionics have been approved for FAFSA by the United States. So that gives us 4 more programs that are now FAFSA approved.
Sorry, can you read those again?
IT security, HVAC, pharmacy tech, and avionics. As a reminder, welding and aviation, airframe and power plant had already been approved and is FAFSA eligible. So we will now have 6 adult ed programs. Just a very fast reminder, remember we have to have 2 years of continuing ongoing adult programs with certain percentages of retention and placement and all those things to qualify for FAFSA. So it's a process that we go through. If you miss a semester, cancel a class, lose an instructor for a quarter, you start all over again. So we're moving. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of people compete. I haven't heard any results or anything about CTSO, nationals, stuff. You're not ready for that now, but could we hear about that next month?
Sure.
Thank you.
And any current events from the governing board?
Mr. Chairman, audience, I would just like to call out 2 people and thank them. The Northwest Campus and Ms. Markham for coordinating a constituent tour I'm going to have for folks in Subdistrict 3 on September 9th, and I appreciate Ms. Markham and Superintendent Donovan for helping with that event. And also just a shout out to Dr. Erb for helping me facilitate my recertification for teaching. Thank you, Dr. Erb.
All right.
That's all.
Any other board members? Mr. Migliorino, any announcements? Mr. Hutchinson, Ms.
No.
Wiley? All right. The consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Ellis has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull one item.
What one item would you like to pull?
I would like to pull the Peoria IGA, 1A.
I-1A. Are you amendable to?
I am.
All right, so we will approve everything other than item 1A, the Peoria IGA. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then we will move to item number 1A, Peoria Unified, for discussion.
Just 2 questions. One, With this IGA, I just want to just get a approximation of when the last time this was reviewed by, it's a pretty lengthy document, and I don't know if we reviewed that recently. That's my first question. And my second question, which I brought up to Superintendent, then yesterday in the attachment at the end, there were two items that I noticed. One was A through F grading and A through F certification, and I'm not sure what West-MEC has to do with that anymore. I just need clarification on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to let Mr. Welch address that question.
Sure.
And then I can address, in fact, while he's coming, I can address real quickly. As signed here, Carrie O'Brien, legal representation from Gus Rosenfeld, reviewed these in May of 2021.
I
As
didn't
re-
see that. Okay.
So her signature is on the last page there.
Mr. Chairperson, Superintendent Donovan, Dr. Pingarelli, thank you for the question regarding the addendum to the IGAs, which discusses services provided by West-MEC as a career and technical education district to our member districts. Those two ones in question, Dr. Pingarelli, the first one has to do with A to F school label report cards. So part of the framework in the state of Arizona for our member district schools is that students receive what are called career and college ready indicator points. Those can be either for college readiness or career readiness, and those points follow the student. So when a student from Peoria High School, for instance, comes to West-MEC to take our aviation program, and when that student earns a credential, they get a point towards the career and college ready indicator points. And so those points, they follow the student. So they leave from us and they go back to Peoria for their school report cards. So what we do is each May and June, Diane Parsons, who you met earlier with the Pledge of Allegiance, actually prepares this report. But we send a report back to our member schools just transcribing any of those points earned for college and career ready indicators. And they include such things as industry certifications, when you pass and complete a program series and the ADA technical assessment, you get some points. When you do the ASVAB test, you get some points. And I have a copy of that I can share with you what those points look like. So that's that first item and how we partner with member school districts to contribute to their A to F school letter grades. The second one is the industry certifications. So in order to get some of those points, students that earn industry certifications that are approved by the Department of Education as really representing career readiness qualify as that point. But it has to go through an approval process, and the CTEDs are the ones that facilitate that process. So for instance, if Mr. Kaltenbach had a new certification in the agriculture industry that those teachers wanted approved, they would work with the CTED, they would work closely with West-MEC. There's an application process that we work to verify with industry partners. We complete that process with the teachers, and then we submit it to the state. At the state, it goes to the Quality Commission, which is a commission of industries throughout Arizona. They approve it or they don't approve it, and then it gets on this final list, this approved list that would constitute a student then getting these points towards the A to F label. So we facilitate that process. We help connect people with industry. We fill out the application. We do some of the legwork on those types of things. So those are the two services that are included in the addendum in the IGA.
Okay, that answers my question.
All right, thank you. Then would you like to make a motion to?
I will make a motion to approve the Peoria Unified School District IGA.
And is there a second? Second by Mr. Ellis. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. Moving on to call to the public. I do have one card here. Cara Del Santi?
Delasante.
Delasante. Come on down.
Good evening, Governing Board Chairman, board members, and Superintendent Donovan. My name is Cara Delasante, and I am an employee at West-MEC. My role as a CNI specialist is primarily to support the development and professional growth of our incredible teachers, while also helping them to meet the requirements and expectations set forth by the Arizona Department of Education. There are academic and professionalism standards that our instructors must teach to ensure all students become strong, critical thinkers and viable professionals once they enter the workplace. Many of these academic standards require students to consider the validity and credibility of the information they gather, and they must be able to look at an issue from multiple perspectives and make decisions informed by verifiable evidence from reputable sources. I bring this up because this board makes important decisions that require valid, credible, reliable information that has been triangulated to test its strength. The most recent example is the decision of whether or not to withdraw or maintain our affiliation with the ASBA. I want to sincerely thank the board members who proposed and voted in support of taking time to research alternative options to the services the ASBA provides in terms of policy advisory. Important decisions require reliable information, which takes time to gather. That exemplifies the standard to which we hold our students. This brings me to highlight the professionalism skills that we require our teachers to embed in their curriculum, specifically complex communication that includes listening actively and resolving conflict, collaboration that respects the contributions of others and seeks to achieve shared goals, thinking and innovation skills that promote solution-oriented thinking and maintaining an attitude of openness, and finally, professionalism that represents the organization in a positive manner and behaves in a way that distinguishes between personal and work-related matters. Principles and values are important lenses through which to view the world, and that is a powerful model for our students to follow. But making decisions fueled by the emotions tied to those principles is frankly short-sighted. It does not exemplify the academic or professionalism standards we teach and claim to value as a district. This board's sphere of influence bears so much more weight upon the values instilled in our children's worlds than the ASBA ever will. Both by proximity and volume, the decisions, conduct, and standards to which the board holds itself sets a far stronger and more tangible example for the students we serve every day. It is my hope that the board will consider its sphere of influence during discussions that can so easily become contentious. Once again, thank you for ultimately deciding to honor the significance of the decisions you make by taking the time to gather valid and reliable information, as well as for modeling the professional conduct that we work to instill in our students in your discussions moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to the board. As a reminder, we can't comment on public comment. I appreciate people coming forward. Moving on to item number 10, our legislative.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused. We approved the Peoria IGA. Did we approve the consent agenda at that time?
No, we approved that beforehand, sir.
Oh, that was approved before. All right. I missed it. I was here.
You voted yes, I believe. All right, moving on to item number 10, the legislative and business partner update. We get to hear you twice in one night. That's a rare pleasure.
Yeah, that's my night, I guess. Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair Straka, members of the board. As Director of Business Development and Government Affairs, I thought it would be good for me to share some perspectives that I've been with you guys for over 3 years now. And I recall the first thing that I did in considering the position and what I could do for West-MEC was to visit your website and looking at your mission and your vision statement. Just as a reminder, our mission is preparing all students today for tomorrow's careers, and the vision is empowering all students to participate fully in the economy by providing and enhancing CTE. Personally, I made a personal decision not to commit those to memory because I'm of the belief that as soon as we commit something to memory, we begin to take it for granted. So I find myself revisiting those often and asking the question, does the work I'm doing or the decisions I'm making help advance West-MEC's mission, and does it help advance West-MEC's vision? So if I find myself having to explain or justify it, then I probably revisit it and say, well, maybe I need to go in another direction, because they're very clear constructs, and I commend your predecessors as well as I commend you for continuing those very simple constructs. In any event, I have some good news tonight, and I'd like to thank this board for its support, as I believe our mission has been advanced in some positive ways. As Superintendent Donovan mentioned earlier, just yesterday I was hand-delivered an executed copy of the unsubordinated ground lease, which permits West-MEC to expand its parking and programming at the Northeast campus by adding approximately, I believe it's 150 to 160 spaces. This project started and stopped prior to my coming to West-MEC, and kudos to the board and Superintendent Donovan for not giving up on the opportunity it represents. I'm here to say, from my past experiences in city management and other aspects of local government, that this is not an easy process, but we were able to develop our relation with the Phoenix Airport staff, transforming them along the way into strong allies for CTE. As expanding anything, let alone an educational facility near a very active airport, is just about an act of Congress, so kudos to all of you. I've noted, I talked a little bit about the allies that we presented and the relationships that we developed with the city, and I think we're making good on that. And there's a couple, and I like to think that those relationships have borne fruit and are bearing fruit. So you recall that West-MEC recently purchased the land for a future 5th campus at the Algodon Center, and through that process, the City of Phoenix guaranteed West-MEC an expedited review process for when we begin construction. The expedited review will save West-MEC a considerable amount of time and money, thereby avoiding past challenges that we've had working with municipalities. Also, with construction underway of the City of Phoenix, of the first phase of in the City of Phoenix, of the first phase of the Taiwan semiconductor plant, which will employ approximately 5,000 people, Phoenix Economic Development is organizing a meeting with West-MEC and TSMC HR department to discuss the potential for West-MEC starting a robotics and automation program. We're looking at our Northeast campus as a potential location for that. And since this board last met, I attended a follow-up meeting with Phoenix regarding the Kmart, repurposing the Kmart facility at the I-17 in Northern. Our next phase in those discussions is to have the educational partners, which include ASU, Maricopa Community College District, and West-MEC, to consider possible adult programs that can jointly provide programming along existing educational career pathways. The programs currently being discussed are in the areas of healthcare, IT, law and public safety, drone technologies, and also possibility for a robotics and automation there as well. Lastly tonight, I wanted to talk about the legislative update. With West-MEC's mission and vision in mind, I wanted to provide you this update. And again, with this being my 3rd year with West-MEC, West-MEC is part of a consortium comprised of Arizona's 14 CTEDs. As this board knows, it took the 3 years that I've been here, plus approximately 5 or 6 prior to, for us to move these 5 initiatives to the finish line. AZCTED has been working on these many initiatives since back in 2012 when the recession hit, when the legislature did away with 4th-year funding. So we've been fighting to get that back. Anyway, all 5 initiatives that the CTED initiatives passed this year, including they include House Bill 2124, which is CTED's average daily membership, which is anytime, anywhere. That bill was sponsored by Republican Representative Udall from the East Valley, and then there was House Bill 2024, the internships funding, which is also sponsored by Republican Representative Udall. Senate Bill 1179 was our 4th-year funding bill, and that was sponsored in the Senate by Senator Mesnard, Republican Senator Mesnard, as well as Representative Udall. And then there's House Bill 2055, which is the Career and Technical Education Projects Fund, which is sponsored by Republican freshman Representative Kaiser. And last, it was House Bill 2301, which is CTED's letter grade exclusion, which was sponsored by Republican Representative Blackman from Snowflake. And I'll assure this board that all 5 of these measures go towards advancing for preparing all students today for tomorrow's careers, and they help empower all students to participate fully in the economy by providing and enhancing CTE. As one of your CTE advocates in the legislature and as a West Valley homeowner, I wanted to let the board know that the passage of these types of initiatives do not increase, my taxes one bit. In fact, the way that the legislature works, that if the money, we had 3 money bills this year, and if the money didn't go towards advancing our mission as well as the similar missions of the other 13 CTEDs, that money would have went somewhere else. As a career and technical education district, we are funded by the 5 cents that you hear Superintendent Donovan talk about frequently, and unlike local school districts, we don't set a levy per se. So I want to let you know that, and as well, I know that you have a decision to make later, which is legislative related. I will say that the passage of those initiatives could not have occurred without the expertise of tri-advocates. Now, when I first got here, we had a different firm, and it was they were good in their own right. But lobbying in the state of Arizona is unlike it's unlike the lobbying that you see and are accustomed to at the federal government. There is no horse trading at the state level. What we do with our mission in mind is annually our career and technical education districts representing their boards, respective boards, get together and they identify what will be our initiatives. And only then are our advocates, in this case tri-advocates, informed of what those initiatives are. As your Director of Government Affairs, I interact with those individuals to then share with our legislators what those initiatives are, and many times, in almost every case with our representatives of these initiatives, they actually came to us. They had an interest after we made this year we did a virtual breakfast to introduce our items, and they asked, how do we help? I was intentional in mentioning that our sponsors for the bills were from one party or another. In this case, they were Republican. But CTE is not a bipartisan issue in Arizona. I mean, I should say it is it is not a partisan issue. It is a bipartisan issue. We had very strong support on both sides of the aisle from the Republican sponsors, their colleagues, as well as Democrats, because in Arizona, they see the need and the connection between career and technical education, workforce development, and the future of economic development in the state of Arizona. So I wanted to share that perspective with the board, not to influence your decision later, but to share that it's, again, a lot of our, Jack showed me the other day, he pulled out our legislation for the anytime, any day, anytime legislation. It's very complicated. Many of our representatives, if you think about a session, they're elected and they're there for 2 sessions. when they come in that first year, many of them, especially if they're freshmen, don't understand the dynamics and details of those initiatives that we put forward. So they need to understand the ins and outs of it. That ADM, the Anytime Anywhere, if you read it, it'll look like a foreign language to you. What tri-advocates, as well as myself, and many times the superintendents around, we spend the time with the legislatures to explain those initiatives to them so that they can talk to their colleagues and determine whether it's going to be something they support. So I probably end in saying and congratulating this board in having the tenacity to stick with these items, because they're not, if you put another initiative, and we're developing that list this year, if you put another initiative forward, it's not likely to be one and done. There's a lot of work, a lot of footwork, as Ms. Wiley knows, because before COVID, I used to see her down there moving her own initiatives. So she knows very well. You need a voice, you need clarity, and in my opinion, and on your behalf, Tri-Advocates has done that, at least in the past 3 years that I've been here. So congratulations to all the board, and congratulations to West-MEC. There is a discussion going on at leadership talking about constellation leadership. As Stephen knows, I kind of like it, because when you think about a constellation, it's made up of many stars, and our success in the legislature this year is just that. It was support from staff, it was support from the board, support from the superintendent, as well as his colleagues around the state and their boards and staff as well. So congratulations to this board, and congratulations to West-MEC and the students. The biggie this year is fourth year funding, but all five were important. So with that, I'll pause for any questions, and thank you for your time.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Dyson,
Yes.
is there an actual legislative update as part of this presentation?
That was certainly a legislative update, sir. I think that over the years, I've oftentimes given my perspective, and as your legislative representative, I thought certainly it was appropriate to share my perspectives, and hopefully no offense was taken.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, all 5 bills passed and were signed by the governor, so
Yes,
they're done.
they're all done.
Hallelujah.
Fourth year funding is finally back.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sort of.
Sure.
Sort of. Mr. Chairman.
Don't rain on our parade. Let us enjoy it for just a few minutes. Then you can tell us later. Any other questions for Dr. Isom? I think you're good. Thank
Well,
you,
thank
sir.
you. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Donovan, would you like to share the other part of the fourth year funding then?
In, Mr. Chairman, Board, in some cases, most cases, it's not a matter of getting fourth year funding back. We won't receive that funding for 3 years. So there's no other educational institution asked to educate people and not receiving the funding for 3 years. At one point, I would say it was even a little worse than what it turned out, but it is movement in the right direction.
It's coming in 3 years, but for sure it's coming in 3 years.
The difficulty is that they take a class or a program, they have to continue that, they have to be enrolled for so many days, then there's the next piece the following year that has to take place. There's some sort of, there's several steps in us receiving that funding for the student who's been around for the fourth, either as the 9th or 13th grade. It sounds very good on the surface, but this will be significant, and at this time, I would sit here and say, I'm really not sure that even the Department of Education understands how they're going to track students 3 years later to then send the funding to West-MEC that it expended 3 years prior to educate that student.
All right.
You mean they will pay you, but you gotta wait 3 years for it?
Yes. If the student
If the student.
prevails.
This is a government at its finest.
All right, well, let's keep moving. That's not really, moving on to item number 11. Mr. Welch, also a second time. Accreditation for secondary students and adults.
Thank you, Chairperson Straka, Governing Board Member, Superintendent Donovan. Earlier, a few minutes ago, Frank, you'd asked for a parade. Well, this is as exciting as a parade. Accreditation is a terrific opportunity each year for the district to invest in continuous improvement. Accreditation for West-MEC really ensures quality learning for all students. That includes high school students and our adult students, which Lizeth is going to talk about here in just a few minutes. In addition to quality learning systems, though, accreditation specifically for our adult programs really provides access to federal programs, federal grants, loans, those types of things. What we celebrated earlier when Superintendent Donovan talked about the programs that just received access so students can qualify for those type of monies was because of accreditation, was because we had the 2 years of continuous enrollment and hit certain measures that opened up those doors for students in our communities to be able to take our programs using some of those grant opportunities. On the secondary side, on the high school side, accreditation allows our credits to transfer to meet elective requirements in our member districts, charter schools, and even for homeschool students and private school students that look to go to a charter school. So a student who's with us can graduate from their high school or charter school because our elective credits that they receive are from an accredited organization. So that's kind of the value of accreditation, but truly the real value of it is because it just ensures these quality learning systems throughout our organization. Accreditation, whether it's at the secondary level or the adult level, really begins by telling our story. So that mission and vision that Dr. Isom just spoke about really is at the heart of accreditation. And our story begins with that. So when Dr. Isom was talking about our mission, this idea that we prepare students today for tomorrow's careers, whether those students are in high school and have figured out a passion at a high school, or whether those students figure out their passion a little bit later in the adult world, it's about preparing them today for that career of tomorrow. And we're dedicated to that as a mission because we envision this community where all of our residents are, are engaged fully in that economy, right? Have connected with a job leading to economic independence and are engaged in their civic duties. Really, that makes our community a better place. It's this vision that inspires our mission and the work we do. Because through that work, we really want to lead people to this idea of economic independence. We hope that whether these people are high school students or adult students, they lead to economic independence. And we do that by providing them with the technical skills to be ready for entry-level employment. But we know that economic independence doesn't stop at entry-level employment, right? It often requires students leveling up in their careers. So we engage students in work-based learning. We make sure they earn industry credentials. We kind of talked about that a little bit earlier today. And then finally, we make sure that they have the professional skills to truly level up and communicate, teamwork, problem solve, those things that are so important that our industry partners routinely tell us through advisory council meetings. We do this through quality career and technical education. It's that quality career and technical education that accreditation is really about. It presents us with globally approved standards by which we can benchmark ourselves and measure our success from accreditation to accreditation. And to talk to you just a little bit briefly about what that looks like in the adult arena, Lizeth is going to speak to you about COE.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, Chairman Straka, members of the board, Superintendent Donovan. I just want to highlight that we have 4 additional programs approved for financial aid. You stole my thunder. That is really phenomenal. Does anybody share my excitement?
Awesome. Good job.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
How many years have we been working on that?
Oh my gosh, since 2015. I mean, we were approved in 2020 for aviation and welding, and now we're adding more programs. As new programs meet the requirements, we'll request additional programs. So it's just looking very, very positive for us. So yay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share my ecstatic success on that one. So thank you. So our reaffirmation accreditation is really upon us. I mean, it will be occurring here within 3 months from yesterday. We will have a team of 6 from across the country that will have a variety of experiences that they will come, they'll visit our campuses, they'll spend time with our staff, our students. They'll be contacting our completers as well as their employers, really to ensure that what we are saying that we're doing is what we're actually doing. So a team of 6 individuals will be here from Monday, September 13th through Friday, September 17th. In 2 weeks, we will have a team lead that will be here for a preliminary visit. She will arrive on Monday, July 26th. On that evening, we'll visit our Northeast campus, and then on Tuesday and Wednesday, she will visit our Central campus, Southwest campus, and possibly our instructional support center at the Renaissance Hotel. So she's going to go ahead and review our narrative to ensure that we are actually ready for the visit in 2 months from then. So exciting times to come. Obviously, it's critical, but all of West-MEC has been working on COE the same way that we've all been working on Cognia. So it's an all-inclusive, all West-MEC working on this next achievement for us coming up in September. So yay. So the standards that you see here, these are the ones that we have been working on for, I'd have to say, probably for about 1.5 years. Including all the criteria that goes along with these standards. Every single one of these standards goes from, the hiring of an individual to the placement of a completer. So it's all inclusive that they're looking at. So it's been a lot of work. We're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, because that will all be mailed out on Friday to COE for review. So we will be very happy to put that chapter to rest. Chairman Strika?
Yeah, so COE, is that Center of Excellence, and these are the 10 standards we need to get to Center of Excellence?
No, COE stands for the Council on Occupational Education. That's our accreditation acronym.
Okay.
Thank
Maybe
you.
if we could, for the board.
Absolutely.
I'm familiar with the North Central Association. I thought we were accredited through them. What's different? What am I missing?
I'm not familiar with North Central.
This is for the high school.
Yes.
Oh, so this is for adults.
This is only for adults.
Adult education only.
So I guess I'm back to where Mr. Straka was. COE and Cognia, are they different groups?
Yes, they're 2 different entities. One certifies adult education. I'm not sure if Cognia does post-secondary.
Yeah, so
and
COE
secondary.
only does adult education, and they are for school districts that really work towards credentials as opposed to degree type of programs. And then in the high school side, we work with Cognia. Cognia is the company that facilitates the accreditation, but the actual certificate is North Central. So it's a North Central accreditation, but Cognia is the one who facilitates the process. They used to be Advanced Ed, so it's hard to see from some of your seats, but if you look around the corner or next time you're up, there's a flag over here that has Advanced Ed, NCA, North Central accreditation. The new flag, after we get it in November, is going to say Cognia NCA, which is still North Central accreditation that we're familiar with.
So I was close.
You were right on the money.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? The comment that I have is just thank you for your support.
So they will be here the 13th through the 7th?
Yes.
And they will be scanning everything, looking at everything?
Yes.
And how soon will you get a report back?
They will give us a preliminary exit upon their review. So on the 17th, we'll get together, we'll hear what they have found or recommendations that they will make, and let us know from there. And then the official one, they meet in October, so it'll be after their October meeting that we will hear back completely from them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, as we discussed, our secondary side will go through accreditation this October. So October 31st through November 4th is when the team will be here visiting. Cognia is still living in a virtual world, and so this visit is likely to be a virtual visit, which is a real bummer because, seeing our facilities in person is what brings them to life. So we're going to try to strap some cameras onto a few of our principals out here and let them go around and show our facilities off. But October 31st through November 4th is when the team will be in place. That team will be looking at each of these domains and standards that are outlined in your packet. This process very much will involve all internal and external stakeholders. So you as board members will be invited to be interviewed. There are specifically 2 standards in the leadership capacity area that refer to board governance. So once we get closer, we're going to share those with you for some greater feedback and input from your side and suggested artifacts that we might show the team. So here in the next month, drafts will come your way to look at and provide some feedback. But the staff has been very engaged, like on the adult side for the last year, working on some narratives and talking about these questions. We will continue to do that in all staff meetings coming up this semester as we do the final preparation. In addition, we'll be sending out invitations to parents and industry members and college partners to participate in some of these interviews as well. We look forward to a successful visit and really sharing with both Cogni and COE our work that is occurring each day to make our community the home that we all know it can be and the Arizona that we want to live in. With that, we look forward to your continued engagement and are happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Wiley.
How often do you have to do this?
We participate in a Cogni accreditation every 5 years.
We received a 6-year accreditation in 2015, and we are aiming for another 6 years, which is the max that any institution can receive from them.
So 5 years for the high schools and 6 years hopefully for the adult.
We just lucked out that it happened to be in the
Wow.
same year
Yes.
this year around, but yeah.
It's huge. Okay,
Does-
thank you.
Does any of this spill over to satellites, or is this just our central programs?
These are just central programs. Our satellites, though, being important stakeholders, will very much be involved in the interview process. So we will have a handful of our member district local directors, for instance, and a handful of satellite teachers involved just to talk about what we do to support CTSOs, what we do to, the things that Dr. Pingarelli that you mentioned in that addendum, those kind of activities like our total quality indicator system to speak to some of those efforts that promote high quality career and technical education.
A little bit happy that right, like having been subjected to TQIs all these years, that it's now you're on the hot seat, right? Like yeah. But at the same time, I'm wondering how much are our teachers, West-MEC teachers, involved in this? Or I guess I would turn that around and hope that as our teachers are filling out all those documents and doing their own TQI kind of thing, it would be helpful, especially for the new teachers, to understand that work, right? Like that their TQI documents and them subjecting and all that paperwork that teachers hate but have to happen. I don't know if that's my fault or not. But right, like to connect the dots that this thing, like all the paperwork you're collecting is largely on the backs of all that documentation that we've been collecting, right? So we kind of collect for 5 years so that we can pass the thing and do that. But it would be, if you haven't, and I suspect you have, but make sure that all the teachers know that this is why we do what we do.
Yeah, Mr. Kalmbach, I would remind the board that also last year we went through AD monitoring, as did Peoria. Mr. Kalmbach, I know you were very busy with that yourself. But so we collected, all of our teachers were very involved last year in collecting artifacts that show excellence for ADE monitoring. So we've been able to really piggyback on some of that work as well to show them that, teachers, the reason we collect these things to show artifacts is really to help tell our story and also to help with some of these accreditation efforts that provide access and opportunities to students, both adult and high school. But we do try to minimize teacher.
Oh, I know.
Our principals could certainly speak to it, but, we've tried to drip it, which is why we didn't start just working on this in September, right? We've started working on this a year ago so that it's, just little bitty pieces of this elephant we're eating. So by the time we get to October, people feel really good about it, I hope.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Migliorino, any questions? Comments? Well, an exciting time. Thank you very much.
As exciting as a parade?
A little one.
Thank you, Chairperson, Governing Board.
All right, thank you. All right. Item number 12. Ms. Medina, the excitement of textbooks on display.
Thank you, Chairman Straka, members of the board. We have some more textbooks on display. This is for the Power Sports program through Yamaha Marine University. This will allow for our students in the Power Sports program to receive their bronze and silver certifications for marine outboard and jet propulsion, which we are finding Arizona is the second largest market for outboard motors. So it'll allow for our students to go direct into industry and be certified in those areas and work on Yamaha outboard motors. They will be on display in the lobby for the next 60 days for your review. I stand for any questions.
Is there also an electronic copy or just the
There is not an electronic copy.
Oh, we're going to old school.
Yes.
Newest technology, oldest paradigm.
All right. Any other questions from the board? I don't believe this is an action, so we can thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Donovan, item number 13, Littleton School District.
Mr. Straka, the board may recall just a month ago, we approved the opportunity for the Gila Bend Unified School District to vote and join West-MEC for the first time. The Littleton Elementary School District has expressed a desire to also join West-MEC. However, this is a little bit different. What we're asking for tonight is that this board allow that Littleton Elementary School District go to their community and ask them through the voting process to be allowed to participate with West-MEC. Different word there, allowed to participate. Littleton feeds the Tolleson Union High School District. The Tolleson Union High School District community already belongs to West-MEC, so the community is already paying that property tax to belong to a CTED. As clarified by our legal counsel previously on a couple of occasions, the Union High School districts are often made up of several elementary districts. The question has arisen many times, well, our community voted to participate in West-MEC, we would like to participate. The feeling, the statutory review has been the community voted to join the high school process, not the elementary. So this is the process for the Littleton Elementary community to say we also want our elementary to have access to this type of opportunity. I do want to remind the board that right now, statutorily, we are limited to 8th grade involvement. But we have been doing some things with Littleton for some time. They have some specialty schools that emphasize career pathways and those kinds of things. This, I believe, will be the first elementary district to try this process of asking to vote. It's not a taxation question. It's a, do you want your students exposed, if you will, to career and technical education, West-MEC, those kinds of things. I believe that if Littleton is successful, we may have a few other elementary feeder districts across our unions who may also come on board. I think the emphasis over the last few years of career preparation, career pathways, career discussions, the point and purpose of education is to develop yourself into an individual who has career opportunities and can become economically viable, has taken on many different types of conversations and importance. We know that the word STEM has become very popular, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which often centers around some of the CTE type activities. So All this is this evening is this board, if you will, acknowledging that the Littleton Elementary School District is going to ask its boundary area community to vote to allow them to participate in West-MEC. There is no additional tax to that community. There is no additional cost to us. There is no additional income to us. It is a participation question.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm assuming that Littleton foots the bill to the county for the election, correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So you said something interesting, so it brings a question. You said there would be no additional revenue for West-MEC, there'd be no additional cost. If we would want to partner with Littleton and say, like we do with, I forget the other, Pendergast, and we come up with a partnership of $100,000, does that then come out of the Tolleson allocation going forward?
We have never divided our allocations by community. We divide our allocations as though it's a pie. We just reallocate to slices.
But they don't have the ADM, so.
Neither does Pendergast.
Right, but I guess what I'm suggesting is we would need to move forward with some kind of, because there's 20 different districts out there, all of a sudden 20 times 150,000, we're talking $3 or $4 million out of the budget. Then the high school districts have to know that that 3 or 4 million is going to come out of their pie. At some point, somewhere, I think the board would like to see some kind of recommendation from staff on how would this be managed. You know, one-off is okay, but one-off times 20 becomes real money and a significant portion of our budget.
I agree. And that's why I was commenting that I believe this will be the first, and if it's successful, we'll see others roll. And this board and staff will need to begin to have those conversations of reallocating our pie.
Mr. Strick?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan, how long has Tolleson been in?
2014.
Okay. So do we have any way, do we have numbers, names, or anything of students that were active in our Pendergast program and then became West-MEC Central students? Do we have any way of tracking that? Is that not just because we haven't tracked it, or it wouldn't, or we're not allowed to, FERPA laws and all that kind of stuff?
I don't believe we've attempted to track it that way because we have discussions internally about some of that, but working with students who essentially are 8th graders, sometimes a little younger, and then tracking that through into their 11th grade year and where they land and all that is just not been something we have overly focused on. I think there's always that question, well, we did this here, does it catch up here? There's a long-term belief that we certainly are benefiting all of that. And we certainly believe, and I know that somebody's gonna say, well, belief doesn't mean anything without data, that more of these students enroll in these types of programs when they get to high school. We ran, Rasan Bartet ran some summer camps this year, and every indication by those students, and we've collected that data and what they said when they came in and what they said when they left and contact information. But oftentimes, we call it a drip campaign, keeping track with them. We started talking about, if you like this, we'll keep track of you and stay in contact with us, and we'll promise you a seat and all these kinds of things. It's all something we're working on.
So is that a thing we could start tracking? I'm just thinking, because I was thinking the same thing as Mr. Straka, because Agua Fria is a union district, Buckeye's a union district, right? Glendale, right. So we've got however many elementary districts sitting underneath all those union districts, and so like we could track that increased statistically enrollment later on. That might be a thing we could do.
Well, how long have we been doing something with Pendergast?
Well, they were in before
2003.
But then we should be able to, at the bare minimum, say, how is Pendergast enrollment in Tolleson Union compared to the other elementary districts? Or do they see a higher proportion? And can we attribute that to what we did with them in 8th grade?
We've never staffed ourselves to do that kind of data research and tracking over a long, long period.
But that shouldn't, we should be able to take our student enrollment today in our central programs and say, these are from Tolleson, and break it down by address of these are in Pendergast. How is that percentage compared to total students compared to the other elementary districts?
Well, but my guess is that when we do things at the elementary level, we don't do registrations and we don't collect.
Well, no, let's
student ID
assume that they
numbers.
still live there and they're now enrolled in a central program.
But
and they live in Pendergast. So does Pendergast have a higher enrollment because we've invested in 8th grade? I mean, yes, some are going to move in and some are going to move out. But that should tell us, is an elementary investment making a difference?
Mr. Chairman, if that's the desire of the board, do I believe that we can mine that data? And the answer is unequivocally yes. I don't think it will tell us anything other than X number of students from the Pendergast School District enrolled in a CTE class within the Tolleson Union High School District.
No, I would just
I
look at
don't
our
know that
central
there's any-
programs. Just,
No, right. But I mean, I don't think it necessarily tells us they were involved with that high school experience or elementary experience. Or we can certainly track the data. We just haven't done it. It's just, we're out there doing good things with programs and schools, and we want to affect students.
but we want to make sure that the good things we're doing, we continue to invest in. And that's why you take those data-driven decisions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I don't need this data. The only thing this data is going to tell us at the end of the day is, should we continue to do 8th grade programs or elementary programs? I don't think a single member of this board is advocating cutting those programs, so what's the point of gathering the data, in my opinion? Thank you.
I think it tells us, is it making an impact? Because if it is making an impact, yes, then other elementary districts are worth bringing into.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I could suggest under future agenda items that we could list this and really delve a little deeper into what we would like to collect and what do we
Okay.
want to do or whatever, and go back to, are we okay with approving Littleton of going out to their public?
Mr. Chairman, I actually, Mrs. Siegel, I have a question for you. If we were to vote on this tonight and it passed, isn't it too late for this to go on the ballot for November?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Pingarelli, I don't think that there's anything inappropriate with this. That if Littleton has already moved to get it on there, we're just signing on and supporting it.
So they must have already moved.
I believe so. I don't. Our law firm has represented from time to time Littleton, but I've not been involved. I know Jim Giel has been involved in that, who does bond work in elections.
But even if it missed the 2021 election, it would be the next election they could go out for in 2022?
I believe that they've got this ball rolling already on this one. I think it's already done, and we're just signing on, giving them our, support for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Pingarelli, the appropriate election folks, you're right. You're absolutely right in the question, isn't it too late? They all know where everything's at, everything's moved, but they need this affirmation that West-MEC is okay with Littleton asking this question. Technically, you are correct. We're a few days past, but this is when our next meeting was scheduled. And they said if you'll put it on that July agenda, and it goes okay. And just like Gila Bend, if this board votes no tonight, they will not be able to have it on the ballot.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to motion to approve item number 13 as presented.
Second. All right, seconded by Dr. Pingarelli, motion by Mr. Hutchinson.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Do we have to do roll call on this, or just a general voice vote? Ms. Markham, would you do roll call then?
Yes.
Barbara Wiley. Yes. Mike Hutchinson.
Yes.
Charlie Ellis.
Yes.
Jim Migliorino. Jim. He says yes. It's on his lips.
Sign language. Nod your head.
Peter Pingarelli.
Yes.
Frank Stricker.
Yes. All right, the motion passes unanimously. I started signing at 4 votes, so. Thank you. Moving on to item number 14. A motion to consider a public hearing on, I believe, the budget. Move to that.
Mr. Straka, I move to convene a public hearing as indicated in item 14.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on it? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Do we have to, we can do voice vote on this? No, we have to do roll call?
You can just do it with.
Okay, voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are now in public session. Or public hearing, I'm sorry. Ms. Thompson.
Hi. Thank you, Chairman, Governing Board members, and Superintendent Donovan. I'm here before you again tonight. Last month, I brought to you a budget for fiscal '22. I laid out a presentation. The budget forms are in your book. You have to approve what you approved to the proposal last month. There are no changes, no adjustments. Statutorily, we cannot change the proposed budget. You have to, or you should, approve it as proposed. And then because legislation what's the word? Because they ended late, we do not have the forms, so there was no way to put them on the new forms. And we just now have our new ADM pricing or base level support. So in September, I will be bringing back to you a revised budget for next year. With the new support level, it should increase our budget about $780,000. But tonight, the budget is as proposed in June. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions from the board?
And I would be happy to go page by page, line by line, if you would like.
You know there is a Suns game tonight.
Oh, there is? Are they a local team? Is that
Yeah,
basketball?
they're a local team.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
If there are no further questions, I would ask that you approve the
I think we have to go back to,
Yes, you do.
any questions from the board? Or from the public, yeah. Don't all line up at once.
They're all watching the Suns game.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, just tip off.
Yes, sir.
I move we close the public hearing and return to regular session.
Second.
All right, it's been moved, seconded by Mr. Ellis. All in favor, say aye. Aye. I saw aye from Mr. Migliorino as well. We are now back in regular session.
Mr. Straka,
Yes, Mr. K, item number 15.
I move that we adopt the maintenance and operations capital outlay budget for 2022 fiscal year as presented.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Ellis. Any more question or discussion on the budget? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Moving on to item number 16. Oh, no, that was number 16. Item number 17. The Lobbying Consortium. Mr. Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of months ago, the board asked for some discussion of whether or not they wanted to remain a part of the lobbying services through Tri-Advocates, and this evening we have that on the agenda for you to discuss. Earlier, we heard Dr. Isom talk about some of his dealings with lobbying and some of the things we do. West-MEC has participated in lobbying services through this JTED, now CTED, since our inception in 2003. For most of that entire continuation, it has been a consortium of JTEDs, now CTEDs, excluding EVIT, who has been in and out of that opportunity a couple of times. Other than that, we all belong. Historically, as said earlier, this is what allows us to work towards various things, from correction of statutory issues. A little bit of this discussion tonight is an example of when some of the good opportunities don't get quite worded right or correctly. We go back and help work towards correcting those. So lobbying is something that often gets a bad rap and is perceived as just chasing money. But as I have previously mentioned to the board, it's also about working with the State Board of Education, the Arizona Department of Education. Within that, we have this thing called business rules, which is how the finance stuff works. Our team often works with that group as representing all of us as a group, rather than 16, 18 people trying to troop into a meeting to talk about the things that don't seem to be working smoothly. I would encourage this board to continue our membership in this and certainly stand ready for questions. Mr. John Kelly is here to represent Tri-Advocates this evening, has a couple of slides and some things he would like to share with you on the work that they do and this process. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First of all, I want to express my appreciation to be able to be with you in front of you today. I haven't been in front of many people at all for the last year and a half. I haven't presented publicly, so forgive me if I'm a little nervous. I'm used to presenting on Zoom and Teams calls with my 70-pound pit bull snoring gently behind me, so if anybody in the audience wants to play that role, it would make me feel more at home. So I would really appreciate something like that. But I am sensitive to the timing, where we are with the meeting and also with the game that's going on. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about Tri-Advocates, a little bit about what we do and how we do it, what we were doing this session in particular, but we can talk a little bit, if you'd like, about our 3-year so far engagement with West-MEC and the CTED Consortium, and what happened with our priorities, and again, take any questions you have. Tri-Advocates has been around for a while. We've been a firm since 2002. We've got 7 consultants with a diverse variety of clients that we work with. I would say that we're fundamentally subject matter experts on particular areas of policy, education, technology, healthcare, just to name a few. And we're also process experts, because there is a lot of process both at the legislative arena as well as the Department of Education, the kinds of things that we've had to battle with them over interpretations of school finance, with the State Board of Education, the matters of policy and accountability, and the executive branch of the governor's office and his policy prerogatives under the current administration. What we are not is political campaign consultants. We don't participate on campaigns. We don't work to get anybody elected. Like many of you, we may participate financially in races, but those are personal contributions not related to our firm activity. Moving right along so we can catch up here. So one of our favorite quotes is that you may not care about politics, but be sure politics cares about you. So it is important for West-MEC to be engaged, no matter what you decide tonight. And I'm not here to tell you that this is the right selection to stay with Tri-Advocates or stay with lobbying. I'm here to tell you what we do, and then you decide. Because frankly, everything we do as your consultants is about what you decide. We're not driving your agenda. We're facilitating the communication between you and elected officials and appointed officials to make sure you can, as Dr. Isom said, meet your vision and mission in what you do. So lobbying, essentially, as you understand it, and as I understand it, is a fundamental right to petition government. All of us are, at various times in various ways, lobbyists. Some of us are paid that way. Some of us play golf. I don't get paid to play golf, but there are certainly people that do, and they're very good at it. We try to be very good at what we do in lobbying. Clients hire us to navigate the process and the personalities. We inform them and the government leaders as to what's going on so they can be active and credible participants in it. And we really fundamentally are there to help your organization meet your objectives as you define them. And obviously, as part of a consortium, you're part of another group of 13 other CTEDs, and so there's give and take and back and forth and different priorities that are regionally appropriate, and we have to manage that. And I want to especially thank Superintendent Donovan and Dr. Isom, because they are such great ambassadors for West-MEC within that consortium. Incredible, professional, and Steve Welsh, so don't let me leave him out, the rest of your staff as well. So we've been doing this with AZCTED since the fall of 2018, and I would say most of what we've been doing is trying to get government to stop doing the wrong things, trying to put your handcuffs on how you deliver education unnecessarily. And I don't know if you've spent time looking at Title 15, a lot of people don't get much farther than seeing how thick it is. And a lot of what we've done is taking bad language out of it, not adding more language. Now, the last budget that was just passed did add a lot more language into Title 15, which is of concern, should be concern to all of us, whether you agree with the provisions or not. There's a lot more, and every time you add more, you add opportunities for confusion, which is probably good for my business, but not for the right reasons. So our job is really not our hardest job. What we spend most of our time doing is not trying to convince legislators that CT is important, because really, frankly, these days, a lot of them know it. It took that crisis of the funding cuts that came 10 years ago, 8 years ago, for them to realize from educators, from business leaders, that CTE is one of the key things in our education system that undeniably works. So as Dr. Isom once again said, you've got people in positions of authority, people in positions of support. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to help. Representative Steve Kaiser, just elected a few months ago, we had a mass Zoom call, and he said, I want to help. Representative Pingarelli was one of those on the call. She said, I want to help. What's going on? How do we help? So we facilitate that communication so you can achieve your objectives. That's what we're here for. The other part of this is that every 2 years, over 30% of the legislative membership turns over. That's the average. It's at least 30%. So every 2 years, like Groundhog's Day, we have to go through the same process again. What does CTE stand for? It's not head trauma. Well, it can be, but in this case, it's not. It's about educating kids in the most successful way possible. So we have to refresh that understanding. We have to work with new superintendents of public instruction, new school finance people, new governor's policy advisors. So we have that as our mission. That's what we're doing on a weekly basis. So what do? We provide detailed weekly reports to all the CTED superintendents. We meet with the CTED superintendents on a monthly basis. We get them in front of legislators. We set up tours. We set up Zoom calls. We set up breakfasts. We go to the various business organizations that care about skilled workforce, and we get them to be a part of the discussion. I would point out that the Arizona Farm Bureau has been a huge supporter of CTE down at the legislature. The Chamber of Commerce, the Phoenix Chamber, the various local chambers, the Arizona Technology Council, those are just a few of the groups that we have, we tell them what's going on, and then they decide whether they want to support it, but you've earned their support. And so we're helping facilitate that. Everywhere you go these days, I'm seeing signs up saying, now hiring. Everywhere. What West-MEC is doing is putting a sign up saying, we're now preparing for you to be hired. You are meeting the needs that this community needs. What we're trying to do is help you continue to meet those needs and get things out of the way. The picture on the screen represents how weird a year it's been. Everything we've done lobbying, not face-to-face, not in the lobby. No lobby at all, except sometimes waiting to get into a Zoom call. So we've been trying to maneuver in this very peculiar environment. And it's odd enough that we've had one of our most successful years in a year where we were doing a lot of our lobbying on Zoom calls, because we weren't really allowed to go down there. Wanted to point out sort of the political environment that you're dealing with the West-MEC territory. By my count, there are 13 distinct legislative districts that are covered by the West-MEC territory. That's 39 legislators, 13 of them in the Senate, 26 in the House. For the 5 bills that we ran, now some of them got folded into the budget right at the end, but for the 5 bills that we ran through the process on our Anytime Anywhere bill, we lost 3 of the 39 votes. And they didn't have anything to do with the content of the bill, had something to do with personality discussions. On the 4-year funding bill, we lost 1. And on the rest of our priorities, they were unanimous votes. Democrat, Republican, 21 Republicans, 18 Democrats. That's the kind of support we generated because we were the process experts that facilitated what you do into that body. And that's what good lobbying is about. I think we all know what bad lobbying is. The money chase that Greg talked about, we try not to do that. We don't do that. If money is needed, obviously that's important, but sometimes it's not the money, it's the rules. And we're trying to make sure the rules make sense. On the slide also are a list of some of the organizations that weighed in support of the legislation we're working on. Again, that's a conscious effort. We reach out to these folks, we include them in our work, make sure they understand the impact of what you're doing, the successful outcomes, and that support has come. So in short, we got 5 bills that we introduced. 2124, which is basically an outgrowth of the Department of Education interpreting very strictly how you could do time and scheduling and what you can get funded for. I think we believe in the statutes there was authority for them to allow for more flexibility. They believed there wasn't. They said go get a bill done. We said what language do you want? We negotiated an agreement. We got it through right at the end. The 4-year funding bill, other than the hiccup that Mr. Donovan talked about, which speaks to there are certain legislators right now that are skeptical about the value of CTE for freshmen. I heard you talk about 8th grade programs. There are a lot of people that think we should be doing more CTE, at least exploration, in the lower grades, but there are certain legislators that think that's too soon. And that was the number one hurdle we ran into, was the concept of when CTE is an appropriate thing to bring forward. As I said, we got rid of some of the barriers on the project funding and on the A through F grade. There is no way to do an A through F grade for a CTED. You don't have grad rates and you don't have statewide assessment. And those are 60% of the assessment grade. So it made no sense. It took us 2 years to do it because of the pandemic, but we got it done. So that's essentially what we did, how we did it. And now let me tell you just for a moment why we do it, at least for me. And Greg knows the story very well. 10 years ago, my middle son was a junior in high school. Good student, decent student, uninspired, uninterested. Discovered that he was really interested in potentially going into firefighting or medical. Enrolled for a course through West-MEC at Glendale Community College to be an EMT. He successfully completed the program, but more importantly, he successfully completed every aspect of his academic career from then forward. And the best lessons he got about how to learn and how to work with people is what he got from that class. Today, he's living in Salt Lake City. He's enrolling in a nursing school. He's explored different career opportunities. He's going to go into medical. And it was all because of the days he did it, the days he spent with West-MEC. And I've told Greg this story many times, but I just need you to understand that 10 years ago, when I discovered what impact CTE had on my son, and we have legislators telling us this story all the time. As soon as I knew that impact, I said, God, someday I hope I get to advocate for West-MEC and for the CTEs, because that would be a really good thing to do. So please understand, no matter what you decide in terms of West-MEC's participation, you still have a fan, you still have an advocate. So thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions you got.
Questions from the board? Ms. Violet?
You do lobbying. How do you compare with ASBA?
How do we, I'm sorry?
Compare with ASBA.
How do we compare? Mr. Chairman, Member Wiley, I think we coordinate with them on various issues, mostly having to do with school finance matters. We keep them informed of what we're working on. They keep us informed, but there really isn't any coordination, collaboration, other than it's information flow, because they're in the hopper with us the same way, in the same battle.
Mr. Miglerino, any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend a motion that we remain with tri-advocate.
All right, Mr.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor then, and we'll continue the conversation. Mr. Miglerino I will say the two Jims made the motion and a second to remain with tri-advocates. Additional conversation, questions, comments?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hutchinson?
I have just a few things to say on the matter. I'm certainly not against lobbying in general. I'm a lifetime member of one of the biggest lobbying organizations in the United States. And I'm also not going to argue that it's not effective. It's very effective. If it wasn't, it wouldn't happen. My issue with this particular agenda item is that it's being funded with public money, which means taxpayer money is going towards political advocacy. And that is something that I feel is absolutely wrong. And it's wrong if it's a nickel, and it's wrong if it's $17,000, which is what we pay, I believe, annually, if I read it right. So it doesn't matter to me how effective it is. It doesn't matter to me how inexpensive or expensive it is. Wrong is wrong, in my opinion. Now, if we can come up with a different way to fund this that's not taxpayer sourced, I'm on board. But if we're going to use taxpayer money, I don't believe it should be used for political advocacy ever. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I think when you say advocacy, I think we're really looking to clarify some things in the law, and so why it is political advocacy. I think long run, it benefits the taxpayers by making things more simple. So I would argue that it's a service to the taxpayers of a small investment here saves them money down here because we don't have to make things so complicated on our reporting.
Mr. Straka, obviously I do not agree with Mr. Hutchinson, and I'd like to move on and call for the vote.
All right, the question's been called for. Is there any other comments? Otherwise, I'll call for the vote.
Mr. Straka, just, you know, I've been on this board a long time, and I've worked with lots of different board members, but to date, minus Dr. Mulcahy, I'm the only one who's been a CTE teacher. And there's oftentimes things that happen or things that are brought up, and my fellow board members don't know about it, understand it, get it, whatever. And I've always tried to take advantage of explaining those things because, you know, every industry has its own little quirks, right? Like, why do we call a widget a widget? Well, here's the history behind it, and this is why we keep doing it. And education is definitely one of those things. And CTE is even more complicated. And then, as I've noticed over the years, like my fellow board members always try to learn as much about CTE as they can. But every time I talk to a legislator, and I've talked to lots of them over the years, like much like the parents and the community members, we're still a secret. Like, they don't understand us. And so we have to have a presence somehow at the legislature to explain what it is that we're doing. Like, there's no other way, as was presented, right? All of the freshman legislators every time. I would say that Representative Pingarelli probably going in as a freshman was the best versed legislative freshman about CTE going in because of her involvement in school districts and that. But at the same time, my guess is she probably still didn't understand or know everything because it's just too complicated. And so this is the system that our government has set up, where we have lobbyists that go in and explain things because there just isn't time for a 2-year legislator to know everything about everything. So how do we have a voice? It would be insane to take our ball and go home and stick our head under the pillow and just hope that everything turned out okay without going down and advocating for ourselves. And for that reason, I'm strongly in support of this motion.
All right. Okay, the question's been called for, so I will call. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
We have to do a roll call?
Pardon me?
Shouldn't we do a roll call?
Ms. Markham, it's been requested to do roll call.
Jim Kaltenbach,
Aye.
Barbara Wiley,
Yes.
Michael Hutchinson.
No.
Jim Miglerino.
Yes.
Charlie Ellis.
Yes.
Peter Pingarelli.
Yes.
Frank Straka.
Yes. All right. The motion passes 6-1. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Mr. Kelly, thank you for coming. Moving on to item number 18, calendar of events. All staff meeting, is that going to be in person?
Yes. Yes, sir.
A little bit more return to normalcy. That's exciting. And the AASBO conference is in Tucson, which means that is also not virtual.
Correct.
More things going back to some form of normalcy. That's exciting.
There is some limits on numbers for the ASBO, Arizona School of Business Officials, which is what that stands for. They had some limitations on total numbers based on the facility. And we will be, as you see, hosting our all-staff at Southwest.
Outstanding.
So
All right.
people will still have some good space.
Moving on to future agenda items. Is there anything the board would like to bring up for future agenda items?
Yeah, the CTSO national results.
Thank you.
I would ask, since we now have our signed, sealed, and delivered parking agreement, what is the plan for Northeast Phoenix? Or not Northeast Phoenix, Northeast Campus. Northeast, you know what I mean. What is the plan for Northeast Phoenix, especially with Taiwan Semiconductor? What are we going to do? What improvements do we see doing? Where is that headed? And maybe even what are we going to do in that quadrant? Because we really aren't servicing, that's in Deer Valley, and Paradise Valley is farther east. One of the things I'd also throw out there is I hear that, you know, we need to expand aviation. That's also, we have a hangar there. Is that something, aviation, a possibility at Northeast Phoenix as well?
I assume
mean,
you're
just
saying as a future
item.
agenda item. Sure,
Yeah.
we can talk about all those things.
And then I do have a question. Have we ever done like a retrospective of the year? What's worked well, what hasn't worked well? I hear we've had a fantastic lobbying year. We've had fantastic programs. Have we gone back and looked and said, hey, these things worked well, these things haven't worked well, so that as we move into the next year, we kind of can adjust? Do we ever do that, or?
I guess I don't know if it's appropriate for me to start answering questions under
Or maybe
future
just,
agenda items.
probably
so-
not, just if you can.
I have lots
It
of
would be
things
a
I'd like to
question.
say, but I'm not sure it's an appropriate.
Shoot the board an email, I guess would
Okay.
be the most appropriate thing, in just response to future agenda item, and then we can decide if that's worth putting on there.
What's the first day of school?
August.
Yeah, we got 2 or 3 starts, and some of those calendars were in here tonight. Mr. Welch, first day of school, or Ms. Babyard.
Yeah, aviation begins August 2nd, and the rest of our programs begin August 4th.
Thank you.
And teachers return.
Teachers return next Tuesday.
We're already back.
And not really an agenda item, but Ms. Markham always gives us a update on future agenda items and reports if she could, that either have been fulfilled or haven't been fulfilled, requests from the boards, that would be great.
She does that every month. It's like clockwork. All right. Any other future agenda items? Mr. Hutchinson, Ms. Wiley? Mr. Miglerino, any future agenda items?
Not at this time. No.
All right.
Go Suns.
What's the score?
18-14. They just Milwaukee
started,
just
yeah.
hit a 3. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Hey, Carl?
That's crazy.
I just didn't understand it.
No, it makes sense, yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Gotcha.
For a CPA, that doesn't